Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of this new format, Worst to Best, in which I will be reviewing every single released level of one certain Geometry Dash creator, ranking them from what I believe to be their worst to their best. Today's creator in question will be effect creator Wulzy, who currently has a total of 20 different projects uploaded to his GD account. For this video I will also be covering his two deleted levels 12 AM and Dark Ambience, which probably none of you have even ever heard of, and I also won't leave out on his 3 unrated levels and his 1 hour building challenge on his second account either, since they are still fully functional and finished levels. In spite of what the title suggests, I will not immediately review all of Wulzy's levels from worst to best, but rather from oldest to newest. My personal ranking will then be shown at the end of the video. With all of that being said, let's just quickly start the video before I lose 70% of my audience within the first 30 seconds again. We start off with Ego Death, which is Wulzy's earliest available level to be found on his account. I can't say for sure if this is his first ever level as well, but I would say that I'm around 75% sure. Because if we take a look at his now restored old YouTube channel, which he lost due to accidentally deleting it, no I'm not making that up, we can see that he hasn't uploaded any level previews or showcases before his first preview of Ego Death. Anyways, it's kind of hard for me to review this level, since it was released in 2015, late 2.0, a time when I was not in the GD community, so I can only really view the project from today's perspective, from which I can say that it isn't that good of a level. Its main gimmicks are the effects with opposing objects, and even though they are rather basic, I appreciate that Wulzy already implemented a consistent theming in his very first level. The block design mainly consists out of just regular 1.0 blocks, but in black, and the gameplay in general is kind of weird, a bit what you would expect from someone's first published level, but not too terrible overall. This is obviously not one of the better Wulzy levels, but you all know that everyone has to start somewhere, and considering that this indeed was his start, it's kind of impressive what he was able to create with the little knowledge he had. Wulzy's second level, Paranormal Activity, is a collab with the creator TinyGamer, now known as ItsTG, dedicated to Eric Van Wilderman. It is one of the 3 unrated levels on Wulzy's account, and I can honestly not figure out why. Maybe it just went under Robtop's radar because it is certainly an improvement over Ego Death in all aspects. The effects used in the drop are way more interesting and even still manage to live up to today's standards in my opinion. The block design I actually quite like, there's a few really cool looking structures here and there, decent stuff everywhere, not a bad level at all, but still a bit generic, especially the first part, which really just does look like a massively hated Gauntlet level from 5 years ago. As already stated in the intro of this video, Wulzy, for whatever reason, has a total of 2 deleted levels which can only be found on YouTube today, one of these being Dark Ambience. It's reasonable to think that Wulzy wasn't content with this work, leading him to take it down, and I can honestly understand this decision. Dark Ambience might be the most boring Wulzy level to ever exist, with it only having one singular part stretched over a whole 2 minutes. Hi everyone, so one thing that I just found out while editing this video is that Dark Ambience is only this long and only has one single part because Wulzy's original plan was to make the level 10 minutes long, which explains the long part, but you know, still it doesn't justify it. It's still very boring and uninteresting. That's just, you know, I just want to clarify that. Only containing a few cubes and these upscaled animated waves used as a background, really basic block design which pretty much always stays the same, as well as uninspired ground design. Combine all of this with this ugly beige and black color palette and a song in which nothing ever goes on, and you create one of the most uninteresting watching experiences I've ever had with a GD level. The one cool thing I have to mention though is this color change like halfway through the level. It's so simple, but yet it manages to make the level look twice as good just for a few seconds. Now 12 AM is the second one of the 2 deleted levels, and in contrast to Dark Ambience, here I cannot fully understand why it was taken down. Sure, it's overall kinda empty, the designs are basic and generic, worse than in Paranormal Activity in my opinion, despite it being released an entire update earlier, and the kind of spooky atmosphere that Wulzy was going for might come off as a bit cringe, but still it's not really that bad of a level that I could understand such drastic measurements. It even has this really cool effect with opposing squares, like I haven't ever seen them used in such a way before. And other than Dark Ambience, 12 AM actually has some energy and intensity going for it. Definitely a much better project. With Wulzy's third official level, Observe, we can now see some humble beginnings in forming his own style, focusing more on cool effects and illusions instead of the typical featured level formula, consisting out of block design, backgrounds, air deco and ground deco. The first part seems kind of unpromising, with only a few posing objects being used as the background and only a few triangles as the block design, but Observe quickly shows us the first ever modernistic background effect Wulzy has ever created, which would then go on and inspire many future works of his, and which he also reused in the next two parts. but just slightly different. Next up we have an interesting dissolving effect, which for mid-2017 seems really ahead of its time. And in the last part we have some really odd looking triangle structures floating around in the background. Oh wait, those are supposed to be fish. Oh well, that looks kinda awful. Anyways, this might not be the best Wulzy level, but it might very well be the most important one for him as a creator, since this is when he seemed to find out what he truly enjoys creating in this game. I kinda don't want to talk about this. I really don't know why, but for some reason I kinda despise Cookie. This level is just so pointless and has like the ugliest color palette of every level ever. Brand Silver and Wulzy just don't fit together as creators, and neither does the level with even itself. This is by far the least creative and most generic level on Wulzy's account, and yes, I just spoiled the last place of my rating, but come on. If you would have taken a look at all of Wulzy's levels as well, this would probably have been the really obvious choice. The song is so obnoxious as well and doesn't even slightly fit the theming of the level, except of course that the lyrics, if you could even call them that, are based around cookies. It's weird that we went from observe to this, but hey, it can only go uphill from here on. Okay, well, maybe not quite yet. Next up we have what is probably Wulzy's least proud level, ... Wulzy created an entire video on his YouTube channel just talking about why it should not have been featured, and I can honestly totally understand why, because it really just isn't that good of a level.
Hello, it's Wulzy. Rubtop featured a bunch of old levels, and apparently he decided to feature this, which I didn't want. You'll see why I didn't want it to be rated when you play it. It's not the worst thing ever, but I'm sure you can understand why I didn't want it to be rated, because look at the block design. It's so winky. It's actually insane. This is the worst part I've ever made in my entire life.
The effects are lackluster and sometimes just kind of ugly. Block design barely exists, the backgrounds are empty. As said, Wulzy never wanted this to be rated and just did it for fun in 2 hours, while in a voice chat with Alkali. While I think this mindset of just creating some random stuff in a few hours and publishing it, no matter how it looks, is admirable, I still don't think that the end product is any good here. This really isn't that good of a level, definitely a weak point in Wulzy's career. Next up we'll talk about Desultory. This is probably the most compact work Wulzy has ever put out, containing a whole 4 different looking parts over the span of just 50 seconds. And each and every single one of them just looks so good. Starting with the background effect of rotating lines, which when aligned just the right way look like some weird abstract 3D animation. It continues with a rather basic part with a rather basic background, which then just randomly starts rotating, creating another really interesting background visual effect in the next part. The level ends off with what I can only describe as a beautiful mess with all of these random stripes in the background bouncing up and down, creating a whirlwind of colors. Another really noteworthy aspect about this level is how smoothly the parts transition into each other. The way the lines from the first part leave the screen, or how part 3 literally reuses the background of part 2 to create something entirely new out of it. Other than the background effects, Desultory doesn't have much more going though. The block designs are all too simple to talk about and are clearly not the main focus, but rather a necessity to make the level playable. It is impressive how huge of a jump in quality Wulzy was able to make between this and what I have just covered before.
It's rated. I don't want it to be rated. Yeah.
And this jump would actually not have yet landed. Next up we have Half-Hearted. Half-Hearted certainly does not live up to its name. We start the level off with this really trippy background with a few thick stripes rotating, somehow feeling random and coordinated at the same time, kind of like what you have just seen in Desultory, just cleaner. To further strengthen this trippy atmosphere, Wulzy created these really cool bouncing structures and these slightly blurry looking saw blades. The next part features some really interesting color contrasts, a really energetic background and some really unique block design, which doesn't look like anything I have seen before. We also have these masked moving lines in the background, which despite looking really cool, unintentionally sometimes form a swastika. That really shouldn't have gone under the radar if I'm being honest. Anyways, we close off the level with yet another banger of a part. It features basically the block design of the 9 circles drop as a background, with more colorful clones of exactly that flying by from time to time. It's kinda weird to explain. Certainly one of my favorite Wulzy levels, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, it would start to go downhill from here on. Next up we have Blatherskite. This level is just so boring, like seriously there's nothing going on. We have this one gradient in the background that gets masked in 2 different ways and that's all. I know this was made all the way back in late 2018 and for the time was at least somewhat original and unique, but it just isn't that in 2021. And guess what year I'm writing these reviews in? The song would have carried if I hadn't heard it 20 times already. And the only thing about this level that I actually think is cool is this weird pixel block design in the first part. Trippy is next up, and let me already tell you that I, just like with Blatherskite, do not really know what to talk about here. Trippy is just too simple. In other similar Wulzy levels, which I will cover later on in the video, he at least establishes some kind of mood or atmosphere. But Trippy has nothing to rely on. Sure, the last part has this kind of quotation effect in the background, but the first part is literally just close to being nothing. It looks like Machina with a blending screen on it. Next up we have Versute. Versute is quite a special Wulzy level because it captures an atmosphere that few other levels can. The lo-fi song combined with the mostly grey themed and really minimalistic designs with some desaturated rainbow colors here and there, combined with a slow, easily sight readable and not challenging gameplay, just create this low-key and calm feel. This might be one of the most low-effort projects Wulzy has ever put out. Yet at least for me it scores better than many other of Wulzy's creations, just because it makes me feel good when I play it. This is the Trippy that actually succeeded, and there isn't much more to say than that. The level is just that simple. Next up we have Hue 180. This level is so colorful, it's unlike anything he has ever put out so far. But other than that, for the first 2 parts it unfortunately doesn't have anything to go for it. Like, not even an interesting visual, just a rainbow gradient as the background and in the block design. With the next wave part though, this level finally gets a reason to exist. I honestly have no clue how I should describe the background effect in this part, but it kind of looks like one of these epic scenes in the movies when they're in the temple and they put a stone in like some random part of the wall and then like 5 random gigantic stone doors epically open up. Just that in this case these stone doors are like rainbow gradients. I don't know. The level's last part is a decrease in quality again. It still has a kinda cool background effect, but just like nothing else. The block design switches up mid part, which is cool, but it still stays very basic and simple throughout. Hue 180 was Wulzy's very first epic grade out of currently 4, which I really cannot understand, but alright. Next up we have NoTsRs? NoTsRs? I'll just interpret it as not serious for now. Not serious is a pretty interesting level. It's probably the most minimalistic thing Wulzy has ever put out, because it really just focuses on its effects. It is the only 2-star level on his account and barely has any gameplay or structures. The first part doesn't even contain a single object capable of killing you, but instead a breathtaking effect made of these small arrow decoration objects that uninspired creators always use as gameplay indicators. This effect, despite looking super complex and difficult to create, literally just consists out of a lot of rotate triggers, and is way easier than that you would think. But effects don't always have to take days to create it to look stunning, which Not Serious should prove, since Wulzy made this effect in a single hour. We also have a second part in this level following the same concept of the moving arrows and making an interesting visual with it. It doesn't nearly look as cool as the first effect, nonetheless it's still quite unique and nice to look at. The thing that drags the level down for me is obviously that it is basically just a showcase of 2 cool effects that Wulzy has made. I get that they are supposed to be the main focus of Not Serious, but we didn't get to see a singular structure in this entire level. Next up we got Beepis. Seeing Beepis on Partition's YouTube channel, calling it the laggiest level ever, was the first time I've ever heard of Wulzy in my life, and it certainly left a good first impression. It has this really unique moving line effect which changes color as it moves between the top and the bottom half of the screen. A really impressive effect, which Wulzy later on explained in a video. The rest of the level is unfortunately not too notable. It features some decent and cool colorful background effects and some really empty block design, but not really much more than that. It is one of the 3 unrated levels on Wulzy's account, which is probably only because of the immense lag that the first part causes on some devices. Next up we have Yob. Yob starts off unpromising with these masked glow beams kind of just not doing anything, and some rather basic deco on the blocks and saws. But fortunately, Yob takes a quick turn after around 10 seconds, when the glow beams just start going wild, creating a really cool looking masked background. Wulzy then also expands on the given designs and adds new ones, making the part feel more filled and more complete than it was before. The highlight of this level lies in the next part though, where an insanely cool particle effect takes place. It really creates the illusion of random atoms forming a piece of heart-shaped paper, which then gets folded, stretched and twisted around. Everything else here though is pretty basic and not too noteworthy. Next up we have Superlunary. Superlunary stands out from all other Wulzy levels due to its length, reaching the 2-minute mark. This was certainly unexpected from a creator that has never really come close to this, and that has consistently been putting out levels which didn't even hit 1 minute in length. And that is actually the main complaint I have with this level. It feels too stretched out and unnecessarily long, because it only features 4 different parts over such a long time, making it a bit repetitive and boring. Well, technically there are 5 parts, but I just refuse to count the 5th one as an actual part. Like, Wulzy really wanted this to be an XL level and unfortunately did this by ending off the level on a painfully low note. Superlunary is generally a pretty flawed project in my opinion, and I often can't even put my finger on what it exactly is. Something just feels off about this level. The first part, for example, just looks visually unappealing to me for whatever reason. The missing easing on the movement of the background in the third part just makes me feel slightly uncomfortable if I'm being fully honest. The fourth part has this terrible contrast between a grey background and very saturated rainbow colored blocks. Nothing here even stands out other than a fairly really cool effect, where all of these particles collect themselves to form the letters SL, representative of the level's title. Oh wait, this seems too familiar. The part that sort of saves the level for me though is the second part, which features this insanely cool background effect with all of these axes rotating perfectly symmetrical around the center. It's just really unique and I like it. I could swear I've seen something really similar to this before. This level is probably way better than I make it up to be right now, but this is still my list, and if there is some weird reason why I just don't like this level, it's simply that way, even if it's unfair. Next up we have a level Wulzy created for Christmas, Lil Lightz. Lil Lightz also only contains a total of 2 different looking parts. The first part features a background with some moving glow pieces and some block design, which despite being lackluster and empty, still covers up a big chunk of the screen. The color choice of piss yellow for it is also really questionable, and honestly just clashes with the colorful background. A more neutral, less saturated color or just straight up grey would have been the better choice in my opinion. The second part is a huge improvement over the first one though, featuring an actually interesting looking background, neat block design which even changes throughout the part, and nice colors. Next up we have Come Back to Earth. Come Back to Earth has always been a very special Wulzy level in many aspects. The primary one being that out of all the projects Wulzy has ever put out, it's the only one with an actual story behind it. Wulzy himself said that he actually spent a few months fully thinking about the meaning of the level and how he wants to represent it through geometry dash. It is in no way an obvious meaning though. I will keep it short in this video, but to summarize, Come Back to Earth is about rap artist Mac Miller, who passed away not too long before the creation of the level, and his album Swimming, which covers his personal struggles and drug-related problems and his journey out of it. The album starter is a song by the name of Come Back to Earth, therefore the level's title. The level represents this journey by a few different factors. The color palette changing from a colorful rainbow hue to mostly blue, representing the high highs due to the drugs and the low lows, the blue representing sadness due to Mac Miller quitting the drugs. The level also gets more difficult as it progresses, further stating how hard it was for Mac Miller. But the reward of this, the mental clearness, is represented by the level getting more and more visible with every part. For more info on this all, go and watch Wulzy's creator commentary video after this one. Now that we have all of that out of the way, let's actually get to the decoration of the level. Come Back to Earth features an entirely new and never before seen blending effect that Wulzy implemented himself. It functions as a masking effect, which you can use on not just structures, but on every single object in the game. This is incredibly impressive, and it's remarkable that Wulzy was capable of thinking this far out of the box. Come Back to Earth might be the most innovative level Wulzy has ever created, which with a creator like him really says something. The designs themselves though really don't give me too much to talk about. Now that he has implemented a new way of decorating things in Geometry Dash, it's fair that he wanted to create an entire level only relying on it, and not on other decoration aspects. Next up we have Trippy. Trippy for me shows how much unused potential still lies within the realm of masking. The usage of it in this project just shows some of the most creative and unique cases of masking that I've ever seen in this game. For example, the way he uses it in the first part to create an illusion of the blocks scaling up, or the way he uses it in the wave part to let certain blocks go from black to white, or really just anything else. The visuals Wulzy is able to create by just blocking off some parts of the screen are just so innovative, and you have to keep in mind that this was made all the way back in late July and early August of 2020, back when the general concept of traditional masking was still rather unexplored, new and fresh. The only thing creators, especially Wulzy, seemed to do up until this point was to cover up all spaces except the ones inside of the structures, and then let some cool looking effect go wild behind it all. I suppose that Come Back to Earth really inspired Wulzy by showing him that masking has so much more potential than he originally thought. There's also just so many small things in this level, just small unique things that seem so simple now that they're in the level, but would require quite some creativity and out of the box thinking to actually come up with, like the downscaled ground spike flags in the first part, the indicators in the last part going full white sometimes, or this little glow effect in the second part. They seem so obvious and simple and not noteworthy at all, but how often do you see these things in levels? I personally never have, and chances are high you also haven't. Next up we have High Spirits. Can we talk about how Wulzy seems to always pick absolutely amazing songs for his levels? No, but seriously, this song is so good. I love it so much. Regarding the actual level though, the thing here that is done the best in my opinion is the atmosphere, which honestly kind of carries the level. All of the parts have really simple designs, except of course for the wave part, which by the way really didn't need to be this difficult. Most of the block designs are just blank blocks with some glow and simple decoration pieces on them. Occasionally you find some masking gimmicks, but overall just nothing too remarkable. It is clean, yes, but just kinda lackluster. The backgrounds, if even there, range from simply low effort, like in the first part of the level, where all we get to see are posing triangles, to unique concepts executed really well, like in the last part, in which we get a pretty neat effect that sort of resembles a snowstorm. I definitely think that High Spirits would end up quite a bit lower on the list if it wasn't for the magnificence of the song, but either way, it's still a really clean, simple, well executed and atmospheric level, which I suppose was exactly what Wulzy was going for. Now, I thought quite a bit about whether or not I would even want to include this level in this video. Not only because one is technically just a building challenge, the challenge being that he had only given himself a single hour of time for the project, but also because I honestly totally forgot that this level even existed until it was already done with around 95% of the video. The reason for that was that Wulzy only uploaded one to his second account, DanZwomeN, and even though I forgot to cover this project, it still would have been justified to just leave it out. What ultimately made me cover one anyways was the release of Wulzy's newest level, oh my god. Okay, screw this sounds stupid. I'll just call it ddoott, yeah, which was a building challenge with restricted time as well. This time 2 hours. Wulzy then decided to upload ddoott to his main account though, which basically forced me to cover it since, you know, I could not justify not covering a level that is literally published on his account. And now that I'm already covering ddoott, I might as well just go the extra mile and cover one as well. The version of one that you can play on the servers right now is actually not even in the state of which he finished it in when he originally did the challenge. To the surprise of Wulzy and everyone else, his building challenge on his second account got rewarded a feature just shortly after its release, and since Wulzy found this to be undeserved, he saw himself forced to update one to make it look better. Now I've been talking so much about just the history and basically the iceberg of one up until now, and let me inform you that I will not have nearly as much to say about the actual level itself. The first part is just the upscaling effect from Trippy, recycled and less polished. The second part has a mildly trippy block design and a simple background, and the last part has some masking gimmicks. Yeah, you can kind of tell that Wulzy didn't have much time for this. It's a fine level, just doesn't really bring much new to the table. Though I think it is remarkable that Wulzy didn't want to have a questionable feature rate on him and decided to improve the level. And you can't deny that the additions really improved the level by margins. With Big Ball, Wulzy challenged himself to create an entire level for the sake of just a joke, being a Twitch user's username Wulzy's Left Ball. He created all of the level over the course of just a week in a total building time of around 12 hours. And in typical Wulzy fashion, it focuses more on unique and original effects and clean looks instead of detailed designs and overwhelming decoration. Though it at some points really just gets too simplistic. The most obvious example being the very last part of the level, which doesn't even feature a real background, and rather simple toggle effects which, despite looking good, are built onto a concept that has already been used earlier on in the same level. Not Wulzy's best work, but still a very clean and polished project. It's one of the 3 unrated levels on his account as well, which will certainly change in the very near future. Also, I'd recommend you to watch his creator commentary on it, it's really interesting. So I've already explained what this level is a bit ago in the segment about 1, so let's just straight up get into the reviewing of ddoott. Oddly enough, even though Wulzy doubled the time he has given himself compared to 1, this project looks much more like a building challenge than 1. ddoott is just like the most experimental thing Wulzy has put out so far. At some points it even reaches the edge to just randomness, which is a major complaint I have with the middle part in specific. For its lacking designs, it goes on for too long. I could well imagine a part like this as a transition into a new part when implemented in an actual level, but its plain emptiness doesn't let it properly function as a full part in of itself. The first part is like alright, though the rainbow colored blocks really don't fit into the level as a whole. The third and final part of ddoott is my favorite here, but it still isn't anything remarkable either. I appreciate the experimentality, but I also think that Wulzy has been putting out better works in less time already, such as 1. So yeah, that was the ranking. I hope you all enjoyed this. Maybe leave a like if you did. Thanks for sticking around until the very end. If you want me to do a worst to best list of the levels of your favorite creator or just any creator you would think would be interesting for such a thing, please leave me a comment under this video and I'll consider it if I'm interested. Otherwise, my next picks would be Presta, Zylenox, maybe Jonathan GD. So if you don't want to miss these or just genuinely want to support my channel, subscribing would be highly appreciated. That's all I have for today. I wish all of you a great day or night, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.